Hello. Today I'd like to introduce you to another one of the principles of karma. It's the sixth principle, and it's the most complex of the 12 ideas presented to you in the idea of karma. It's called the law of the mirrors. What is the law of mirrors? I guess the simple response would simply be that you cannot see something in another human unless it is within you first. A couple of examples of that would be simply this. Let's say that you think somebody is an idiot. Well, guess what? It has to be within you first before you can ever recognize that. The law of the mirrors expands in so many different directions and is an extremely significant principle because life, in and of itself, is always showing us who we are as individuals. Yes, even life reflects back to you or I who we've become and what we're about. If you have difficulty in your life, as an example, it would be simply because you have difficulty in you. If you think a person is arrogant, then you have to have a level of arrogance within you first. You see, the idea behind this one simple principle is that if it's not in you, then you cannot see it. You wouldn't recognize it. You wouldn't even know it was there. In other words, if you had no level of arrogance within you, then what you would see is confidence in another person. And besides, the mirrors are more about the idea of judgment, how we judge things to be, and that's always reflected back to us. I can promise you that if you believe that someone else is a bonehead, then you're going to have your own bonehead experience. That's the law of karma. What you put out there indeed is going to come back to you in a variety of different ways. Within uh, the sixth principle of karma, the law of the mirrors, there are seven aspects to it. And those aspects are to break it down. In fact, the first aspect of the seven principles or the seven mirrors is actually this. Who are you in that moment? Your life is always showing you in that moment who exactly you are and what it is that you're doing. The interesting thing is most of us as individuals would prefer to deny any level that that idea is actually emanating from us. Trust me on one point. Whatever begins with you is always going to end with you, and that's the basic precept of all 12 of the principles of karma. But in the law of the mirrors, it's so critical to pay attention in the moment of what's going on around you. Now, I'm not talking about analyzing, I'm not talking about thinking about it, I'm just talking about simply observing it. Observe yourself in life because life is always showing us who we are at any given moment. It's always there, it's always ever present, and it cannot be denied in any way, shape, or form. You see, the reason it's set at the midpoint of the 12 principles is because it's one of the toughest to master in actuality. I recall that when I was studying in the Far East, it took me a good 6 months in a monastery to realize that what my teachers were showing me was actually me and what I had become in my own life. And the same is true with everyday humans walking up and down the street. There's no question of that. Every single experience in your life is a direct reflection of you. Shared with you in the first video on karma the idea that if you want that great love in your life, that you yourself must become that great love. Because if you attempt in any way to control the idea of love, I can promise you what's going to be reflected back to you an incredible degree of difficulty in the arena of love. Why do I say that? Because it's reflecting back to you something that you cannot control. These mirrors can become so subtle that they are overlooked and they're constantly reflected to us over and over and over until we get that subtlety that's being shown us about ourselves in that moment in which we find ourselves. It's that present moment that is always much more important. I can also promise you, too, another idea that if you have an experience somewhere in your past that you don't particularly care for, that it was, let's say, extremely difficult emotionally, filled with anguish, then I can promise you, as long as you hold on to that idea of what happened in the past, it's always going to be reflected back to you. How's it going to do that? It's going to do that because what it's going to do is promote having people around you that are going to constantly seed that anguish, constantly feed that anguish until you learn to let it go. When you learn to let it go, now life and people can no longer reflect that back to you. Why? Because you simply are not generating it. We all are the generators of our own experience. And to that, there's no question either. Most of us don't want to accept that idea. It's not my fault, it's someone else's fault. No, it's always when we assume personal responsibility of ourselves, which is the idea of the fourth principle, or fourth principle, which basically says that wherever you go, there you are, which means that you're the common thread in every single event in your life. Now, how can you avoid every single thread, you being the commonality in it all? You simply cannot do that. Oh, you can in your mind, but how far is that going to get you? It'll continue to repeat the same things over and over, which has already been shared with you. If you wish to change your life and become empowered, become the very thing that you seek, and then you watch in front of you, you watch the type of people that you attract. I know, as a personal example, after growing up in an abusive household with a dad that you could construe as your worst nightmare, and then after stepping into the Southeast Asia, Vietnam, in a combat zone, it creates an angry person. And in my younger years, yes, before I became a monk studying in India, I was a very angry person, and I was always blaming everybody around me. Why were they all so angry? Who could be around an angry person except, ironically, another angry person? That's how the mirrors work. It's always going to put things in front of you that are exactly identical to you. We are energetic generators. We are electromagnetic fields, and like, as we know, always attracts like. Why would a peaceful person, even though it does happen, I myself to this day, when I'm around angry people, I'm always at peace with it, to give them a living demonstration of what peace can be in any given moment. You see, the mirrors can work two ways. One, they're going to reflect to you who you actually are in every given moment, and you cannot escape that. The second way that they can work is once you've mastered them, you can reflect back to people exactly who they are without ever saying a word. And you can do that, going back to the same analogy I just gave you, being around angry or frustrated people. If you reflect back to them the opposite, there's an interesting thing that occurs. What happens is they become just like you. In other words, that angry person is going to calm down because you aren't getting involved in their anger. No, you are actually showing them another path, another way of accepting them themselves. And besides, if you really think about it, the idea of an angry person is just a person caught up in themselves. And to that, there's also no question. People that are angry, impatient, even the idea of frustration, what life is doing is reflecting to you a level of selfishness that you may have within you, selfishness or self-centeredness. And we all can have that at different moments. Some people, it's almost perpetual. But once you realize that selflessness is a better path, again, the mirrors change, and they always change and become exactly who you are in any given moment. And that's to mirror what you're doing so that you can see yourself in action. But most of us don't want to take a look at that. We would rather once more place blame and say, no, I didn't do that. No, it's not my fault. It's someone else's fault. Well, once more, the mirrors are there to ensure that at some point we do assume personal responsibility. Because after all, if you don't assume your responsibility, how can someone else? And in fact, if you're not going to assume your responsibility, guess what the mirrors are going to reflect back to you? Other irresponsible people. And what are you going to do? You're going to condemn them. You're going to judge them for their own irresponsibility without ever realizing that they are a direct reflection of you. I know this is a hard pill to swallow. It's totally understood that it's a hard pill to swallow, but in fact, it's the truth. And the ideas of karma, all 12 of them, have their basis in universal truth. What is a universal truth? A universal truth is a truth that if it fits in one place, it has to fit everywhere. And looking at that idea, People can refute this. People can do or say anything. I love the comments that come on here without people realizing that they're just simply a direct reflection of themselves. A direct reflection of yourself can even come down to everything that you're not. Let's say insecurity is an example. What's going to happen? You're going to attract insecure people so that you can see insecurity in action, so that you can learn to understand your own insecurity in life. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your focus off of everybody else for one simple moment in time and put it on you. Once you do that, take a look at that idea objectively. When you can look at it objectively, that means you're not judging anything. You're just seeing it for exactly what it is, and you're seeing it the way it is, just the truth of your own self. And then once you do that, don't condemn yourself. Accept that that's a part of you. Once you accept where you stand, now you have a basis of creating a change and creating a new direction in your own life. Now, another way that the law of mirrors can show up is let's say you have lack consciousness, that you're struggling for the idea of money. Well, guess what the universe is going to keep demonstrating to you? It's going to keep demonstrating to you the very same idea by returning to you the idea of lack instead of the idea of prosperity or affluence, that's what you're really looking for. Because there's no way to get away from who you are. It's not that the world is holding you down. It's you yourself are holding you down. The world isn't holding you back. You're holding you back yourself. One of the gifts that the universe gave to us is that we could become anything that we wanted at any given time that we wanted. To achieve that, simply become the reflection of what you know that you would choose to have in your life as your experience. Once you do that, what'll happen is the universe at some point in the near future will start reflecting back the very new dynamics that you've decided to take on within yourself. Why? Because there's no way around it. Because it's only going to show you you. So once you change that inner view of yourself of living in lack, and you see it as prosperity, we've all heard the idea that everything is present. So if that's true, where is it? How can it come to you if you aren't the very thing that you seek? The idea of the mirrors is to help you, I, and any individual down the path of life by constantly showing and reflecting back to us every single thing that we think, say, do, and feel. It's a direct relationship between you and all of those events. So learn not to separate yourself from the events of your life. Like myself, when I was younger, very angry as a young person. I only had angry people around me. After I came out of the monasteries, became peaceful, the vast majority of people around me are peaceful, easygoing, fluid people. They just flow basically with life. They don't interrupt it by something that they think they're not. You, I, we know that we're angry. We know that. We know that we have built this up in us. We can take anything, frustration, hurt, and we could take it into a variety of different directions because you're always going to attract to you exactly what you are so that you can see what you have become within your own self. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the author of the 12 Sacred Principles of Karma. My name is Stephen Hairfield, Stephen L. Hairfield, PhD. And I wrote that book to bring knowledge to the masses. And my suggestion would be is if you ever pick up that book, there are many great reviews on Amazon.com. It's 5-star rated, and they all say pretty much the same thing. It's a very empowering book to read. Know yourself first. You know yourself first by what life shows you to be. Please visit my website at www.hairfield.com. And if you do get that book, read it through in its entirety and then go back and study each principle one at a time and practice it one at a time until you have it down. And when you get to the law of the mirrors, you're going to find it extremely fascinating. Own you first. When you see the truth of you and your own divine nature, you'll also see that in every other single human. In India, there's a wonderful little phrase. It's called Shanti Satyam. What does that mean in American? The essence would be simply this: peaceful truth. Journey well, journey in peace, and I hope you enjoy this little short video. Shanti.